On quitting Plassans by the Rome Gate, on the southern side of the town, you will find on the right side of the road to Nice, and a little way past the first suburban houses, a plot of land locally known as the Aire Saint-Mitre. This Aire Saint-Mitre is of oblong shape and on a level with the footpath of the adjacent road, from which it is separated by a strip of trodden grass. A narrow blind alley fringed with a row of hovels borders it on the right, while on the left and at the further end it is closed in by bits of wall overgrown with moss, above which can be seen the top branches of the mulberry trees of the Jas Mevrin, an extensive property with an entrance lower down the road. Enclosed upon three sides, the Aire Saint-Mitre leads nowhere. It is only crossed by people out for a stroll. In former times it was a cemetery under the patronage of Saint-Mitre, a greatly honoured Provençal saint, and in 1851 the old people of Plassans could still remember having seen the wall of the cemetery standing, although the place itself had been closed for years. The soil had been so glutted with corpses that it had been found necessary to open a new burial ground at the other end of town. Then the old abandoned cemetery had been gradually purified by the dark, thick-set vegetation which had sprouted over it every spring. The rich soil in which the grave diggers could no longer delve without turning up some human remains was possessed of wondrous fertility. The tall weeds overtopped the walls after the May rains and the June sunshine, so as to be visible from the high road, while inside the place presented the appearance of a deep, dark green sea studded with large blossoms of singular brilliancy. Beneath one's feet, amidst the close-set stalks, one could feel that the damp soil reeked and bubbled with sap. Among the curiosities of the place at that time were some large pear trees with twisted and knotty boughs, but none of the housewives of Plassans cared to pluck the large fruit which grew upon them. Indeed, the townspeople spoke of this fruit with grimaces of disgust. No such delicacy, however, restrained the suburban urchins, who assembled in bands at twilight and climbed the walls to steal the pears, even before they were ripe. The trees and the weeds, with their vigorous growth, had rapidly assimilated all the decomposing matter in the old cemetery of Saint-Mitre. The malaria rising from the human remains interred there had been greedily absorbed by the flowers and the fruit, so that eventually the only odour one could detect in passing by was the strong perfume of wild gillyflowers. This had merely been a question of a few summers. At last the townspeople determined to utilize this common property, which had long served no purpose. The walls bordering the roadway and the blind alley were pulled down, the weeds and the pear trees uprooted, the sepulchral remains were removed. The ground was dug deep, and such bones as the earth was willing to surrender were heaped up in a corner. For nearly a month, the youngsters, who lamented the loss of the pear trees, played at bowls with the skulls, and one night some practical jokers even suspended femurs and tibias to all the bell handles of the town. This scandal, which is still remembered at Plassans, did not cease until the authorities decided to have the bones shot into a hole which had been dug for the purpose in the new cemetery. All work, however, is usually carried out with discreet dilatoriness in country towns, and so during an entire week the inhabitants saw a solitary cart removing these human remains as if they had been mere rubbish. The vehicle had to cross Plassans from end to end, and owing to the bad condition of the roads, fragments of bones and handfuls of rich mould were scattered at every jolt. There was not the briefest religious ceremony, nothing but slow and brutish cartage. Never before had a town felt so disgusted. For several years the old cemetery remained an object of terror. Though it adjoined the main thoroughfare and was open to all comers, it was left quite deserted, a prey to fresh vegetable growth. The local authorities, who had doubtless counted on selling it and seeing houses built upon it, were evidently unable to find a purchaser. The recollection of the heaps of bones and the cart persistently jolting through the streets may have made people recoil from the spot. Or perhaps the indifference that was shown was due to the indolence, the repugnance to pulling down and setting up again, which is characteristic of country people. awful events, the authorities still retained possession of the ground and at last forgot their desire to dispose of it. They did not even erect a fence round it, but left it open to all comers. Then, as time rolled on, people gradually grew accustomed to this barren spot. They would sit on the grass at the edges, walk about or gather in groups. The grass had been worn away and the trodden soil had become grey and hard. The old cemetery resembled a badly levelled public square. As if the more effectually to efface the memory of all objectionable associations, the inhabitants slowly changed the very appellation of the place, retaining but the name of the saint, which was likewise applied to the blind alley dipping down at one corner.